Like you said, my name is Payson. I'm a blockchain community manager over at Fidelity Investments in the Fidelity Center for Applied Technology. Real quick about me before we dive in is I actually manage our internal community of about 5,000 folks who are really invested in the blockchain technology and crypto community, hosting events around education and networking and career building. So that's enough about me. Let's dive in and introduce yourselves.
Hello, everyone. You mind if I go first?
Go for it.
Awesome.
Take away.
So my name is Swenor. I am the CEO and co-founder of a company called Reach. I am old. I started as a software engineer 24 years ago. About 12 years ago, I jumped over into entrepreneurship and product executive management, things like that. 2013 is when I got into crypto because my friend is a jerk. He sent me a thing called Bitcoin because I bugged him about not paying me back for lunch. And then like a couple weeks later, sent me this thing called Bitcoin and say, hey, I paid you back. And I was like, oh, I don't know what this thing is. So then I started looking into it. And then every year after that, I have sent him the email receipt to show him how much money he paid me for that burrito. So thank you. Henrik is his name. So like I said, started really investing in 2013, started building in 2015, and been running companies in crypto since 2017, early 2017, and started Reach in September of 2019, so 3 years, so happy birthday to us.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But we started the company because we saw that there was a major issue with blockchain. Blockchain, as you all know, is awesome. The potential of it is awesome. It's not so awesome yet, but it will get there. But we will never get there if more developers aren't coming into the space. And so that's what Reach did, is we asked the question of what is stopping developers coming in? Turns out it's too difficult. They have safety concerns. There's too much toxicity. So we fixed that. We built a full end-to-end blockchain development platform. It consists of a programming language, a compiler, deployment tools, testing tools, pretty much everything that is required to bring blockchain development into the modern world. And we achieved it. We've now onboarded over 7,500 developers. I believe we're approaching 8,000 at this point. We have around 25 VC-backed startups building on top of us. Blockchain agnostic, so what we're really doing is we're building the Microsoft of blockchain, and things are going really well so far.
It's fantastic. We are going to dive real deep into that.
I hope we do.
First, Spencer, over to you.
Cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Spencer. Started my career as a software engineer about 12 years ago in 2010 at the Evil Empire at Google for a little while. Very quickly realized that the big corporate machine life was not for me. Left and joined what was at that point a startup called MongoDB, which was a database, traditional Web 2 database platform. Was an engineer there for about 8 years, really focusing on the distributed systems components of the database. So I worked for many years on their horizontal scaling, sharding system, and then I was the tech lead for a few years of their replication system, which also involved being responsible for their consensus system based on the Raft consensus protocol, if you're familiar with that. But basically thinking about these distributed consensus protocols was kind of a natural progression into starting to think about blockchains as much bigger scale, decentralized consensus systems. My entry into Web3 and crypto was a little bit later than yours. I didn't really get involved until about 2020 because for me, the thing that really hooked me and got me excited about this space was the idea of decentralized data and decentralized identity, and the actual Web3 vision of like a consumer internet where users really control the content, the user-generated content they create online, and can bring it with them across applications. So I don't like the content moderation policy on Twitter, or I want to be able to have a different newsfeed algorithm for surfacing information. I should be able to switch to a different platform, but not have to start from scratch. Have my whole social graph come with me, have all the content, all the posts, all this rich amount of data that we as users of the internet are actually contributing back to these platforms, break down the silos where that data gets controlled by the application that you use to create it, and then gets kind of held hostage and used as a moat to hold you in and lock you into their ecosystem. I'm really excited about the potential of decentralized tech to break down those barriers and allow much more data portability, interoperability with user control, and really making the user the root of all data rather than the application, so that they can bring their data with them. So that was the vision that really excited me about what's happening in this space, and I started looking for, what do we need to build that? We really need like a real database platform, and obviously I'm coming from a database world, so I started thinking about who's building the Web3 database, and that really led me to Ceramic, where I've been for the last 2 years. I do have to make an admission, I am not technically a founder. I was an early engineer and have been a core part of the protocol development for the last 2 years. Team was about 8 people when I joined.
That's really cool. So, you mind if I ask questions?
No, go for it.
I know I'm not the
Keep it going.
moderator. So, are you using like semantic web type of a system, or?
So we don't directly build with like the semantic web protocols and standards that kind of came out of the original Web3 movement from a few years ago, but I think we are building a graph database that allows expressions of relationships between different pieces of data and queries. So I think Ceramic could become a platform for semantic web information as something that you would build on top of it, but it's not something that we're like actively building with at the moment.
That's cool. So, so semantic web, Tim Berners-Lee, solid, the stuff that he's working on is really cool. If you're here, I don't know if he's you're doing great things. But one of the things that I've always seen a problem with that is speed, is like caching, is like if I'm going to build a social network on top of users' information that can be shared. Number one, the only thing I can do is number one, cache it, because I need to be able to display it really quickly. And if I cache it, then it's not their data anymore, it's my data. How do you guys prevent against that?
I think it's a great question. So a little bit about how Ceramic is built. We build on top of IPFS, which is a decentralized peer-to-peer file storage system built by Protocol Labs, the team behind Filecoin. And all of the data in Ceramic is stored in these sort of verifiable event logs. Every update is signed by a user's key and stored on this peer-to-peer network, so it can be synced from anyone, and you can validate the integrity of the log and the integrity of the current state. But you're right, so like the first version of Ceramic that we kind of have in market right now, anytime you want to load a user's data, you kind of have to go to the network and query the network and load it on demand. Sure. And that means you're seeing several seconds to load a user's profile. And
one user's profile.
Yeah, exactly. And there's really no way to run queries across the network to see like, how do I get all of the posts from any user over the last 10 minutes? This was a real, obvious usability problem. The performance, people aren't going to actually use a social product or really any, classic web product for mass market is going to work if it takes 5 seconds to load the page. People just aren't going to use it. And you need that advanced query functionality. So the system we're building now, that we just released developer preview for last week, 2 weeks ago, is called ComposeDB. And it's basically a way for applications to deploy an application-specific database that indexes, and basically it does kind of keep a local cache for that application of all of the data, but it's organized around this concept of data models. So you might have like a profile model. Let's say you're building a blog post, a blogging application. You might want the user profile model, the social followers model, like who do I follow, who do I care about, blog post model, comment on blog post, and like on blog post, right? Like let's say those 5 models. And then similar to how you might install like an open source library through a package manager like NPM, you can kind of install the data model and get all of that data within that data model that's been created on the network thus far synced into your application's database. And so then, now you can build a really fast index with sort of traditional Web 2.
But you're building it locally, though.
Yeah, you're building it locally. You can store the data. Right now, we're just putting it in Postgres. And you can have the kind of traditional Web 2 scaling techniques for speed and availability and scalability of the local deployment. But the source of truth for all that data remains a decentralized network, which is the key. It's not writing to Postgres and then getting synced to Ceramic. It's the other way around. It goes into Ceramic first. The Ceramic network, which is built on these verifiable event streams and IPFS, that is the source of truth for the data. And that becomes the mechanism for syncing all these different application-specific databases. And eventually there will be, right now there's no token economics on Ceramic, but eventually there will be an economic system for state availability to actually incentivize data sharing and making sure that applications don't just hoard that data and actually contribute it back to the network.
So Spencer, sorry. A lot of what you said, I'm still very new to this space. Some I understood, some I didn't. But what is an actual use case of like owning your own data and keeping it locally? What is the value there to an average person, beyond just saying, oh, well, Twitter has it, now so do I, and I have full control?
Right. I think the big advantage for consumers is interoperability and portability, is the ability to share the data across applications. So that instead of just using, so let's say I start publishing on Psychic, which is a Web3 Medium clone that I just invented, the Web3 version of Medium, and it publishes data to Ceramic. And then I start putting a bunch of data there, and then Medium starts, or whatever, this Medium clone starts censoring posts, starts taking down certain content from their server and not sharing it, and I disapprove of the policies the decisions they are making. Now, if another app wanted to spin up and be a competitor, they could start their own brand new. They could, even if Medium was open source, they could fork their source code, create a copy with different content moderation policies. And if the code's not open source, it doesn't matter. They can still build their own front end on top of the data. If the data is stored in Ceramic, the data is open. So now you can create another blogging platform that interoperates with Medium. And I think the other big value is actually the rate of innovation, because now, let's say you have some sort of blogging platform or social media platform, and it's not even so much that you disagree with the platform, it's so much as another developer goes, this is great, I love what you're building here, and I have an idea of something I can add on top that will make it even more valuable. I've got a team of really great machine learning experts, and I think I can make the best possible algorithm for surfacing the data that's being created on your blogging platform. So like, you built this platform for creating the content, that's awesome. Now I'm gonna build like an AI or curation mechanism for surfacing the most interesting information. Right now, if you wanted to go to Medium and be like, I've got a great team of AI builders, and we want to build you a really incredible AI content discovery system, you'd have to get hired by Medium, right? Like, they control all the access. If this was built on Web3, this data would live on Ceramic, someone could just go pull all the data that's being generated by Medium and just create a curation marketplace or some sort of new UI or add some new commenting feature or some new, social discovery feature or anything. It creates this whole collaborative ecosystem, very similar to what's happened with DeFi, right? Like in DeFi, you deploy a contract to someone else and go, that's awesome. I'm going to take that, and I'm going to take the outputs of that, and I'm going to feed it into the inputs of this other thing. And I'm going to create this whole interconnected ecosystem of contracts and applications that are all playing with each other and interacting and composing really well. It's the same idea. That's kind of what Ceramic's trying to do to data. So that all these different applications can share data, and new application developers can come in, take the data that's being created by other applications, and add more value on top. So I think the other advantage to consumers is that the collective Web3 ecosystem is going to move much, much faster than the Web2 ecosystem can, because the access to the data is open, and you have this permissionless innovation that can happen on top.
That's great.
I think that another way that I would put it is that it removes the walled gardens.
It removes the walled gardens.
And these centralized companies that we know as a Medium or anything turn into more interfaces for the data rather than the walled garden. So it allows for, I would even, like you said, that build on top of. I think that what this does is it allows for Number one, people that you don't even need an interface to be able to access people's data anymore. You could, like, if you had the skills yourself, you could access the entire database of all information. And if you're a developer, I like to use Uber as an example. Like right now, it's not really data because it's whatever, but sort of is that. Say I wanted to create a new Uber right now. Everybody is driving for Uber. I would have to raise hundreds of millions of dollars to actually incentivize these drivers to come over from Uber to my new application. Mm-hmm. And being able to actually separate the foundation from the interface, it allows for a smaller, two kids in a dorm room to be able to build a better interface on the actual foundation of all of the data. Because Uber would no longer own the drivers, they just own the interface, the user experience. And this allows for, I think, more innovation. It allows for better competition because you don't need to actually raise hundreds of millions of dollars. And Uber is just one example, but pretty much all of these things are a good example.
And it makes the switching cost for consumers much lower.
Right.
If someone wanted to come out with a competitor to Uber, or even a competitor to Twitter, right? Like Google tried to launch a competitor to Facebook and failed, right? Like Google couldn't do it with Google Plus because
I might have been the only one who signed up for Google Plus.
And that's because there's so much value in the data and in the network effects. No one wants to use a social network that none of their friends are on. So the switching costs become really, really high. You have to really add a lot of more value to get me to justify switching everything over, refollowing all of my friends, recreating all of my content, building up a platform. Right now, in this new world, a brand new competitor can be launched, and on day 0, the very first day it launches, you could sign in and have a full feed of data and information because it builds on the data that's already been created by other applications, just with whatever the unique pitch of this new competitor is. They can add their value add and their unique flavor and whatever makes them stand apart, but without having to build the entire ecosystem from scratch. So now users have choice. They can switch. They can be like, oh, this new social media app just launched. I'm going to check it out. And you can try, and you can see, oh, they have these extra features, and the other one I was using doesn't. Those are some cool features. I like that. Or, it's not that bad. I kind of like the old UI better. I'm going to go back. But you can switch back and forth. You can even use them both simultaneously, and the data you create in one shows up in the other, so you're not constrained into one ecosystem or the other.
That's really helpful. Chris, I want to ask you a little bit about more of your transition into what you're doing now. So you said you were a software engineer for 20 years before you got into entrepreneurship and now what you're doing now. What was the problem statement? What was the point that led you to where you are? And I know you said you've had your company for a couple of years now. Tell me about that journey. What was that like for you? What was the fulcrum there that made you decide to make the switch?
I think that the major thing that the catalyst was I love responsibility. And
you don't hear that all the time.
As a developer, I had a lot of control because I was building product and making things. And it's just that I always wanted more and more and more. And it kept going up and becoming the CTO and everything. And I mean, I first started at a large company and really didn't feel like that had that much responsibility because I could take a week off and who cares, right? Because it's a big company. And then I started working in academia, and I was like, people work like 30 hours a week. I don't really love this. If you work in academia, you know it. So then I was like, okay, I need more than this. I need to be able to something that I know that I can actually bet on myself. And this is when I found startups. I was like, oh, startups. I'm still an engineer at this time, and so I'm still building, and I'm like, okay, but I have a lot more responsibility now because if I take a week off, it's going to hurt the company. I'm like, oh, this is actually awesome. I'm really actually making a difference here. And then I started going up in startups, and then eventually got to a point where I'm like, okay, well, I think I need to start my own startups to get even more responsibility.
Most people like a vacation.
So you and I are different people, Chris. I was like a reluctant startup person because I value work-life balance too much.
Yeah,
but I was like, but this is what I want to be building, and everyone building in this space is a startup, so here I go.
But if you have that passion and you have that drive, I can see why the draw is there for you.
Work-life balance to me doesn't exist because of how much I love what I do.
That's great.
So me doing what I do fulfills me in both pleasure and also just productivity. So it just kept going like I want more, I want more, I want more. And that's kind of how it made the switch from being a developer to being in management and helping more people do better things. Because the more I can actually empower other people to do things, the more effect I can have on the world. And eventually, maybe they'll write about me in history books, but only if we keep going that direction.
I don't know. I feel like sometimes you can allow yourself to take a break. Do you ever take a break? When's the last time you took a vacation? This is not part of the questions.
I don't know. Sure. Don't do as me. I'm not a role model. Have work-life balance. Do the thing. It's just something that works for me. I work a lot. I've always worked a lot. Like I said, when I worked in academia, everybody around me worked 30-ish hours a week. I worked 60 to 80. And it was weird, and it was like an awkward situation. And I didn't do it because I was forced to. It's just because I loved doing it.
That's so important. I think, sometimes when you're innovating and you're starting something new, no one really focuses on the joy. So it's really good to know that you're diving in because you're passionate, and it's just what brings you that level of satisfaction, and that's wonderful.
My team also is the best team that I could ever even dream of building. And working with them every day and seeing their passion as well also motivates me. I also make sure that I should take time off. They don't always, but they should. But that is one of the things that energizes me.
That's fantastic. So your organization that you run now, can you tell me a little bit more about the problem that you were trying to solve and how you got there? Where did the idea come from? And,
sure.
And how did you start to take that idea and put it to paper and make it happen and bring it to life the way you did? And how's that gone? That was a big question.
Yeah. So you guys here, you like blockchain, right? You think it's pretty powerful. The future's great. And it's doing so much. How many developers do you think are working full-time today in blockchain? None. Nobody's actually working. Yeah. It's all fun. So Andreessen just came out with a report probably a few months ago that's estimated around 6,000 developers are building applications full-time in blockchain. 6,000. With a market cap of $1 trillion, that's a lot of leverage on a small amount of developers. Mm-hmm. The internet, which we all love, you guys love the internet too, right? Yeah. Okay. Internet has 25 million developers. So how can the Web3 actually ever be truly Web3 if we only have 6,000 developers? So what I did is I looked into the actual issues. Like, why are these 25 million developers not flocking to it? Because, you guys all, blockchain's amazing. This is like the next generation of technology. Where are they? And, did it, asked around, really kind of got to the crux of it, and the developers found it too difficult. It was to switch from the modern Web 2 development to the antique Web 3 development, because a lot of actual building in Web 3 is more like building in the 50s. It was a completely different paradigm switch, where it's like they don't know actually how to do that. They would have to relearn how to develop in that way. So
is that why you said that blockchain has a lot of potential to be great?
Oh yeah. Blockchain has not actually provided any value to the world yet. So yeah, we're still building, we're still figuring things out, and it's going to be a big thing. It's just not there yet. So like I said, number one, the blockchain development is too difficult. Second big thing is not only is it too difficult, but if you make a mistake when you build in blockchain, it's a game over mistake. There's no rolling back the MongoDB database. There's a you ruin people's lives mistake. So it's much bigger stake. There's zero budget for bugs, and it's harder to build in. So there's more of a chance you're going to write a bug. So why would anybody want to come over and risk that? And the final thing that I personally really don't like, and I think a lot of people don't like it either, is that blockchain is toxic. And the reason why blockchain is toxic is because you are incentivized to be toxic.
What do you mean by that?
Because if you own a token, the more toxic you are, the more value your token is. Because if you tell everybody else why their token's bad, and they believe you, you make more money. And so this is the only industry that I can think of that incentivizes this toxic behavior, this tribalism. And just go on crypto Twitter, see what people say about other chains. That's bad. That's a horrible place to be. And that needed to be fixed as well.
So how do you fix that?
Oh, it's a great question. So what we did is I partner up with an amazing man, Dr. Jay McCarthy. He's not here, so I can say nice things about him. So he's been researching programming languages, compilers, formal verification for over 15 years now. I think it's getting close to 20 years. And all of those things, if you package them correctly, will fix all three of those issues. And that's what we did with Reach. Is number one, we built a program language that is a higher level language that's similar to what traditional developers develop now. They're no longer needing to build state machines. So it's much faster and much easier to write. The second thing that we did through the compilation process, we used a thing called formal verification. We automatically generate formal proofs to mathematically guarantee that the code is correct. This is not testing. This is actually literally turning your program into a math problem and proving it will be correct in every potential reality. So it's like testing on steroids. It's amazing. And the final thing that we did is we abstracted away the technology. We abstracted away the actual blockchains. So developers building on Reach no longer ask, what chain are you building on? They don't say, are you Ethereum? Are you Algorand? Are you, whatever the new layer 2 is of the week? They just build, and they help each other build, and no matter where they're actually launching. So we made blockchain easier, we made blockchain safer, and we removed the toxicity.
That's amazing.
That to me is worth all the time and effort I put in.
Right.
Well, now I see why you find your joy.
Yeah.
I loved a lot of the things you said there, and I feel like I definitely noticed a lot of the similar things when I entered this space. You said at the beginning about how, despite being, almost, over 10 years, like 14 years since the Bitcoin paper now, like into this crypto journey, that you look around, it's like, where are all these applications that people have been talking about how blockchains are going to change the world, they're going to unlock all of this incredible new types of applications. Where are they? Like, we have DeFi, there's like some cool things you can do there. We have NFTs, we have like some very preliminary things. But in terms of like really transformative applications for end users, they're still not there.
75% of all contracts ever launched are one of 12 contracts. Mm-hmm. How's that feel?
Yep.
Does it feel like great? And the reason for that is because people are scared to write their own applications. Because if I make a mistake, I ruin people's lives. And Reach fixes this. And I like using like real use cases, like rather than big flash things. We're a product that exists, and we've been existing and people building on top of us. A use case that I like to actually use, Maker, which is one of the most beautiful, elegant applications out there. It's a stable coin, if you don't know. Look it up. Great. Rune, he's one of the people I look up to on Twitter, but great product, and it is used quite a bit. They spent like around $1.2 million in launching the MVP of it to actually get the actual construct out, and it took them around 11 months of coding to make it happen. We have a company building on top of Reach called XBacked, beautiful, wonderful people, and they built the same product with more features in 6 months' time, and they did it by hiring Web 2 developers from insurance companies. They spent 80% less money building it than what Maker did. And that's real savings. 80% savings, not 20%, 80% savings because we made it easier, we made it safer, and we can take a Web 2 developer, and in 4 weeks, they can build anything on blockchain from scratch.
That's awesome. So I'm going to ask both of you, what comes next for your organization? Spencer, we'll kick it over to you.
What comes next for Ceramic? I mentioned we just launched this developer preview about 2 weeks ago of our new graph database, which enables much richer types of applications in terms of being able to express relationships between data and query across the entire network to do things like find me all of the posts by all of the users that I follow. For within this sort of data model system, we're going to be working on a UI explorer for these data models to really make this as seamless as possible. I think that, again, like Chris mentioned, building on blockchains has traditionally been challenging, and even on Ceramic right now, it's harder to get started right now on Ceramic than it is with MongoDB or another Web 2 database. But I think the goal, it actually should be significantly easier. When you think about Web 2 application development when it comes to data, almost every single Web 2 application has a user profile table somewhere in their database. How many different e-commerce apps have an orders table and a products table? And all of those tables look incredibly similar, but are all slightly different. And every single Web 2 application that wants to launch any sort of product has to think about how to structure their data, how to model their data from scratch. And they wind up making the same mistakes and going through the same process over and over. You have all this duplicated effort across all of these organizations. With Ceramic, you can have one person or one team or people put a lot of thought into designing a well-designed data model that they can be reused by dozens or hundreds of application developers all around the world. So now you only need one person to build a profile model once. And now instead of having every single application, it's like, okay, let's make a profile table in our database. You just go to this registry of all the data models that exist, and just like open source software development, like really revolutionized software development, because now every single application that needs to log a file doesn't need to log, a log message, doesn't need to build a logging system from scratch. They can just like npm install, a logging framework or whatever. You can just compose DB install profile, and now boom, your application has data capabilities to read and write profiles, without you having to do any of the schema design or database configuration yourself, and also getting the benefit of access to all the profiles that have already been created by any application on the network. So the goal is as the ecosystem starts to grow, at the beginning, okay, right now there's not that many data models in the network. If you want to start building on Ceramic, you have to define your own model. As the ecosystem matures, you're going to start seeing this great catalog of all of the models that applications have already built, and more often, a new application is not going to have to define their own data models at all. They're just going to go to this marketplace, see oh, okay, I need a profile, I need a post, I need a comment, click, deploy, and boom, you get started in 30 minutes. You have a full-featured database that you can read and write with all of the APIs auto-generated for you to create data in any format you need. So I think this is the real focus for the whole team right now, is kind of making that vision come true. We just launched our developer preview of this 2 weeks ago. We're adding a lot of new features into it right now, including we're trying to get ready for DevCon in Bogota in 2 weeks.
I'll be there.
Yep, we're planning on having the developer preview support relationships between data models and be able to say okay, you have a comment on a post, right? And those can be added later. You could have a post model, and then a different team could later on add a comment functionality on top of it by creating these relationships. And then we're just doing a lot of work on making it more robust and production ready. Right now, it's still only live on our testnet. The goal to have it be kind of production ready by ETH Denver in February.
Wow, that's ambitious. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
It's awesome.
Chris, what was my question?
What's next?
What are we going to do next? I really like what you guys are doing, by the way. I think that's it's extremely needed. The way that I kind of see it is that you are building the graph for IPFS. It's kind of like what I like to see is you're building a caching system for the actual almost semantic web that anybody can actually build. And eventually, I would hope that you're building a decentralized node structure so that that's eventually that there will be a network that you don't have to rely on a single place, and anybody can work. So I think it's really cool.
And I don't want to. I'll add one more thing very quickly, which is just if you want to go even further long term in terms of what's next. ComposeDB is this database layer I just talked about, this graph database with these data models. That I think is really important for demonstrating the value of interoperable data. Longer term, we want to eventually pull out the event streaming layer that powers that. So like every piece of data has these like verifiable event streams that build it up. We want to actually pull that out and have that be almost like a decentralized Kafka. So you have like a event streaming system that can be totally agnostic to what is actually in the events and what type of structures you build. So then that can be, then at that point, ComposeDB might just be one of many database systems built on top of Ceramic. And you can have, Ceramic can be almost the glue layer between a bunch of different decentralized platforms and architectures.
How far off do you think that is?
That's probably, I mean, I think we want to start prototyping that probably by the end of next year. Probably have something like, do not quote me on any of these dates, but maybe hopefully have something like
Write this down.
Going live on mainnet in early 2024 with that. I mean, it's something because it's going to be a gradual process. Like we already have these decentralized event streams. It's more about separating out the architecture and adding the crypto economic incentive layer that will power it. And so it'll take time to sort of pull those pieces apart and figure out the right tokenomics and whatnot for it. But right now we're pretty much all focused on ComposeDB and making that successful.
That's really cool.
Awesome. Chris, back to you.
My turn. Okay, so what are we doing next? World domination.
How do you get there?
How do we get there? So I think I mentioned this earlier, is that what we're doing is we're following the Microsoft and Apple playbook. First, what you do is you build developer tools to make building applications easier and make it easy for them to provide value to the world. That's going well. We've focused primarily on Algorand in our marketing and our training-wise because we love Algorand. We think that the tech is great. They sponsored this event. Of course, they're amazing. But we are starting to look at the other chains. We've always been blockchain agnostic, but we're a startup. You have to focus resource somewhere. Now we're ready to start taking over the EVM chains. Convincing those developers there's a better way. Stop spending so much money. Stop losing everybody else's money and build on us.
How do you convince them?
Show them the proof. I'm not a big fan of big marketing words, and I just like to show and point. Like right now, we released a DAO, similar to Moloch DAO, which is fully on-chain treasury management, and I believe it was under 200 lines of code. Fully complete. To give you that comparison, Moloch DAO itself, lots and lots and lots more complex code. That's just one example. Why would you go and build all of that when you can actually write this and have it more secure and make it so you don't need to actually learn so much? You don't need a mean to actually build Moloch DAO. You can actually go and hire a Web2 developer and teach them a few things. But like I said, we're following the Microsoft playbook. We're building the developer tools. We are owning the developers over the world. And just like my buddy Steve Ballmer said, developers. If you
What did you say? I'm sorry. Could you say that again?
developers. So if we have all the developers in the world, then we start providing them tools to actually provide better user experiences for their users. We then start actually approaching our business model directly to consumer. And this is once again, what Microsoft did with their Windows, started actually going directly to consumer, and we started going that direction as well. But in the end, my goal is to commoditize all protocols, make it so that developers can build on us and choose which protocol they want to launch on, purely based off the actual features of the protocol and not the onboarding system. And my goal is for Reach to be blockchain, just like Google is the internet. The thing that people see and think when you actually ask them on the road, what is blockchain?
So if our audience wants to learn more, where do they go to learn more?
Well, if you want to learn more, if you want to hear me talk like I do all the time, I'm always on Spaces, Twitter Spaces. Follow me on Twitter, at Chris Swenor. When you want to learn more about Reach, just very simple, reach.sh is our website. If you want our documentation, if you guys are nerds and actually want to get your hands dirty, it's just docs.reach.sh. But yeah, come and join. Our Discord is actually full of pleasant people, not your toxic crypto bros. So come and build. Let's make the future real.
That's fantastic. Love that. Spencer, if folks want to learn more about ceramic, where are we
I
going?
just want to say also that what you're building is super cool, and very strong agreement on the developers being the key to everything, and making that experience much smoother is really what's going to unlock the power of this space. So
Great.
really glad to see. I feel like blockchain tech is really cool, but it's been way too complex for way too long, and,
Right.
and anything we can do to actually make it accessible is really game changing. So really important work.
Thank you.
If you want to learn more about ceramic, you can check out our website, ceramic.network. That's CERAMIC.network. The website is a little bit out of date, but you can also join our Discord. Is actually probably the best way to get in contact with us. And I think there's actually chat.ceramic.network will direct you to our Discord.
So we only have a couple of minutes left. And so I guess I'm limited to just one more question that I'm going to toss to each of you is if you had any advice that you could give to somebody with an idea,
Oh, I love
Well-
this question.
what are you going to tell them?
All right, all of you guys out there, if you are new to the space or if you're worried about you're too late, you're not. The future of blockchain is going to be built on the backs of the people that aren't in the space today. Because if us were as smart as what we thought we were, we would already made the blockchain mainstream. So not only am I urging you on to say, keep pushing forward, we need you to. If you don't come in and bring your crazy ideas, the ideas that I think are stupid, because if I thought they were great, I would have done them, blockchain won't exist. So be motivated, be passionate. Your idea is great, and let's make it happen.
That's fantastic. Hard to follow. There you go,
Geez,
Spencer.
yeah, I don't know if I can follow that up other than a big +1. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about the potential of when blockchain stops being niche and stops just being for people who are like in it for the ideological reasons, right? Like, I really believe in the value of decentralization. I really believe in the value of self-sovereignty over our data, our identity, our finances, all of that. But blockchain is going to win when people who don't care about that stuff are also using blockchain technology because it delivers value to them in their daily life, not just in this like abstract way, but it's like, oh, like this is my favorite app. I love it. I can, do cool things with it that I can't do anywhere else. And it's using blockchain under the hood, and I don't even need to, maybe, I don't need to understand all the nuances of what that means. I think there's an interesting question about whether users need to be aware of the fact that they're managing keys or not. But that I think there's a lot of potential there in just thinking about, when my grandmother can use blockchains and can use applications built on blockchains, that's when we win. So I'm really excited about what's going to get us from here to there.
It's funny that, so you said you came from Mongo. I use MongoDB as an example when I talk about blockchain all the time.
Yeah?
Because when's the last time you heard someone say, I'm building Uber, but on MongoDB? Like that just it doesn't exist. It's a huge red flag to me when someone says, I'm building X on blockchain. Who cares why you're building on blockchain? Like that, if you tell me that, you're trying to do a cash grab, you're trying to build something off the hype, off the back of blockchain. Use blockchain because it's adding value to your product. There's a white paper out there, or not a white paper, a research paper out there. It's called Some Simple Economics of Blockchain. If you have not read this, write it down. Some Simple Economics of Blockchain. Not enough people writing this down. But the reason why I said to actually read this is because what it does is it's a whole research paper on what the true value of blockchain is. It's everybody when you say what's the value of blockchain, people go decentralization, immutability, trustlessness,
Resistance.
yeah, censorship. Those aren't values; those are features. What do all of those features actually provide as far as values go? And this paper goes into an in-depth explanation of what the true value of blockchain is. And if you're thinking about using the blockchain at all, read this paper because this tells you where you can actually truly squeeze the value out of blockchain to make your product a better product.
You're going to have to tell me the name of that again when we get off the stage. We are at time. I want to thank you both for being here. This was a great conversation.
Ray.
Thank you all for being here as well.
I'm sure we can't go for another hour.
I don't know, we might get yelled at over there. So have a great afternoon and evening, and
Thank you so much.
enjoy the event. Thanks.
Thank you.